Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and honored participants. Welcome to the second webinar of Cube 2023, The Art of Leisure, a closer look at jobs in the leisure economy. Before we start, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Calvin Christian, and I do have a partner with me, which is
There are agenda here, and we're going to be your masters of ceremonies for today's event. And it's our pleasure to guide you through today's session. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge CUBE 2023's organizing committee, our esteemed sponsors, and all of those who have contributed their time and effort. Without their support, today's event would not be possible.
Before we proceed to our main event, let us first hear some opening speeches from the head of study program of business economics and the chairman of CUBE 2023. First, I will call upon the head of the study program for business economics, Ibu Fati Ramandati, to give her opening speech. To Ibu Fati, the stage is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. I am Fatia Ramadanti, the head of Business Economics Program at Universitas Mulia. On the behalf of the program, I would like to welcome everyone to CUBE Competitions for University in Business and Economics 2023. CUBE is a series of competition events managed by Business Economics Program together with business economics student associations here in Universitas Mulia. CUBE aims to provide a platform for university students to utilize their potential and abilities to analyze and working with real-life business and economics problems. This year, we bring up the topic of leisure economy, the rise of purposeful leisure in the age of consumerism. The emergence of leisure economy became a pervasive phenomenon in the contemporary era, affecting people across generational cohorts. The term leisure economy was born as people, especially millennials, now prioritize leisure consumptions. For example, entertainment and lifestyle, which offers more of experience if compared to conventional goods. The rise of leisure economy illustrates the shift in spending patterns in the society from good-based consumptions to experience-based consumptions. This shift serves as the chief issue of CUBE 2023 Hopes to Explore. We hope that CUBE 2023 may facilitate the bright and young minds of QR to hone their skill, expand your knowledge and your competence to provide solutions to many complexities that we are encountered in the modern world. Lastly, I would like to thank our official case contributors, PT Karisma Starvision Pass, to their tremendous support to our event, our honorable speakers and judges who have spared their valuable time to present here in our event, as well as for the committee of CUBE 2023 for their hard works to make this event possible. It is a huge honor for me and the program to have you here. I deeply wish this series of events could be beneficial and insightful for all of you. So stay safe, everyone, and hope you enjoy CUBE 2023. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bifati, for the opening remarks. Now, I would like to call upon the chairman of CUBE 2023, Nixon Wijaya, to give his opening speech. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nixon Wijaya, and I am the chairman of CUBE 2023. I would like to welcome all participants and viewers to our annual competition for University in Business and Economics. This year, we are very honored to have PT Karisma Star Vision Plus as our case contributor, as they are one of the leading media companies in Indonesia. We are very excited to learn from the expertise in the entertainment industry, especially towards leisure economics. I would also like to welcome Professor Jisman Simanjuntak as Director of Universitas Prasetya Mulia, Pak Fatoni Rahman as our Dean for School of Business and Economics, and Bu Fati Ramadanti as our Program Manager. I would also welcome our honorable guests and speakers to CUBE 2023's first webinar. The theme of this year's competition is Leisure Economics, the Rise of Purposeful Leisure in the Age of Consumerism. We believe that this is an important topic to discuss as the way we spend our leisure time is changing rapidly. In the past, leisure was often seen as a time to relax and escape from the stresses of work and school. However, today, many people are looking for ways to use their leisure time to learn, grow, and make a difference in the world. We believe that the shift towards purposeful leisure is a positive development. It means that people are more interested in using their free time to do things that are meaningful to them. This is an exciting time for the leisure economy, and we are eager to see what new and innovative businesses emerge in this space. Lastly, I would like to give my best wishes to all of the teams in this competition. Whatever the outcome will be, remember, you all have won in facing all the obstacles and challenges that exist during this process. Thank you for your participation, and hopefully CUBE 2023 could enlighten us for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nixon, for the opening remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the webinar shortly, but before we start, do all of you know who is going to deliver today's webinar? Because surely it's not going to be me or Daryl, of course.
Let me help you with this one, Calvin. So today's webinar is going to be delivered by one of the faculty members from Prasetya Mulia. Let us invite Mr. Reda Widarsha. Please come to our stream.
Hello,
Hello, good morning, Mr. Reda.
good morning.
Morning. So, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Calvin. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great also. Could you tell us more details about your life, Pak Reda, as a faculty member in Prasetya Mulia? Like, for example, what subject are you teaching? How is it going? And what does it like to be a faculty member in Prasmul?
I think being a faculty member in Prasmul is such a honor position and it's such a fun and wonderful job. Um, what I'm teaching right now is I am teaching food and beverage management. I am teaching hotel management. I'm teaching business research method, and I'm teaching. It's called a senior class. It's called Capita Selecta. So it covers all different facets of the tourism academics domain, from the practical and managerial aspects in hotel management and F&B management to the research side on BRM or business research method. Also on a more holistic approach on the Capita Selecta. And also I am an advisor for the final project or the Tugas Akhir. So I have some research groups as well as we call it project improvement groups that I am happy to, which we have, I'm really honored to be their advisor. So it's all different facets. And beside that, I'm also doing research. My particular research is on service management. So different aspect of service, as well as going into sustainability in the near future, but not right now.
Wow, there are so many tasks that you do, right, sir? That's great. So, other than being a faculty member in Prasmul, what other things that you do aside from teaching these wonderful students?
Teaching these wonderful students, I think I focus everything on teaching wonderful students. But I do enjoy a little bit on the calmer side in the weekend, maybe hanging out with my friends. I do enjoy a lot of morning walks, like on Saturday and Sunday. And then I like to read new topics, as well as doing research is probably the other part as well, because that takes a lot of time during my off time on campus. So
Awesome. Now, if I may ask, what topic are you going to talk about today, and why do you think it needs to be delivered to the participants today?
I think the topic is going to talk about the pandemic push, um, the trends, as well as the effect of automations on the leisure tourism employment sector. I think when you talk about the leisure industry, is such a big topic, so I may not cover all in advance, but I may cover the tourism aspect part. Um, Also, I have some really interesting trends coming from the pandemic 2020, 2021. And then there's a lot of implication for that as well for the employment growth for the leisure industry.
We can wait to hear more about leisure economy from you, sir. So, without further delay, let us start the second webinar of CUBE 2023. So, to Mr. Reda, the stage is yours.
Okay, so let me present. Can I share a screen? Okay. Uh, give me 1 second. Okay, so we're going to talk about the. Okay. Oh, okay. Give me 1 second, Calvin. I have a little bit of an updated version. 1 second. Okay, give me one moment. So I'm going to talk about the pandemic mush transformation in the leisure industry and the case for Indonesian tourism business. I think coming from the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesian tourism has been hit hard, really hard by the pandemic. But so far, we are on track on the trajectory for recovery. And then there's really interesting new behaviors that come out as a result of it. So there are several things we might want to consider in terms of things that come out of the pandemic push. For example, how emerging technologies and new business models are shaping the tourism industry, the growth of the leisure economy, and the emergence of the leisure economy and its impact on consumer behavior, consumption patterns, and the benefits and challenges. I'll try to answer these questions with the next few slides. One of the things that I was looking at is was looking at the impact of it as well for the employment for the employment sector. So when we're looking at the pandemic or the tourism industry as a whole, Indonesia right now is in a trajectory in which the service employment sector has increased dramatically. So it's coming from uh, about 4.6. It's coming from about 35%. Now it's almost 50% of Indonesia's tourism sector, of the economic sector, of the employment sector is in the service economy. So in that case, a leisure economy plays such an important part, an integral part of it. Next. Now we're looking at the distribution of the employment growth. So when we look at employment growth in Indonesia, it's still mostly dominated by other tourism industries. So informal sectors still dominate the tourism industry employment. When compared to Malaysia, for example, next slide. When compared to Malaysia, Malaysia has much more formal employment in their tourism sector. So this is something that we must work on because it also give a different dynamic of the pandemic push. Next. So what observation can we look at from here is that the employment numbers, there's no notable difference in job category distributions. In terms of leisure tourism employment sectors, it's still dominated by the other category. And the tourism employment distribution is more balanced between its formal job sector as well as informal other sector. Next. So what is the pandemic push change that we can see? Well, one thing is that the pandemic push really has changed the Indonesian economy as a whole, as well as particularly in terms of tourism. Coming from the pandemic, Indonesia is becoming more competitive in terms of its TTDI index. There's also increased digitalization as becoming the norm for customers. So in this case, when we talk about foreign businesses investing in Indonesia, especially those with large capitalizations, they should aim directly profit from the thriving Indonesia's tourism consumer digital savviness. I think that's one thing that comes from the pandemic is everybody start becoming more technologically savvy, even from lowest social economic status up to higher social economic status. But foreign businesses, not the only one that stand to benefit, domestic businesses as well, from large to small, medium enterprises, especially those who are more in touch with the Indonesian customers' behaviors, they may have huge opportunity to tap into this need. Okay. The goal of more sustainable and inclusive growth will also spark more green jobs in Indonesia. So coming from pandemic push from a macro level, I think there is an increase more opportunities in the green economy sector in Indonesia. And this also applies to tourism, where the post-pandemic, the focus of sustainability has pushed sustainable innovations and green tourism companies to emerge in the tourism sector. Well, one aspect of the increase in technology also is the rise of customer jobs. This is not only felt in Indonesia, but it's also felt worldwide. While Indonesian labor remains competitive, it's not impossible to think in the near future, robotic will augment service jobs and customer will have more jobs and tasks in service transactions. So one aspect of it is that we are going more in terms of where when you talk about service is providing and consuming. Now, when you talk about provider and consumers, we become co-producers atau co-creator of value. Okay, next. Okay, let's talk about the bullish digital economy because I think this is one of the interesting aspects of the Indonesian economy. Next. Coming from pandemic push, it comes with a very competitive TTDI or Tourism and Travel Development Index. So much improvement extends compared to our previous year. Next. And our tourism receipts has not yet regained from its former level. So we still have more ways to go in terms of regrowing the economy coming back from the pandemic. Okay, and then when you talk about the digital economy, this is something really interesting to note. When we talk about leisure economy as a whole, the digital economy really dominates the leisure sectors. I think in the coming years, also Indonesia economy as a whole, because if you look at the trajectory, digital economy sector in Indonesia grows eightfold compared to the national GDP. So their economic output is much, much higher. From 2017 to 2021, Indonesia's digital economy showed a remarkable 414% growth compared to their other sectors, formal sectors. From tourism perspective, I thought this is something that is very interesting. ERIA, which is the association, they noted that the technology really supported mobility-related sectors, so it allows more penetration to less popular tourism destinations and allow those less popular tourism destinations to flourish during the pandemic. So there's a lot of aspects of digital economy that stands to benefit and how it changed consumer behavior as well as market. One aspect is now most consumers in Indonesia have mobile app, and with those mobile apps comes increased higher level of instrumentality, meaning that now they are capable of doing more with less. So when you talk about later on, I'll show you trends in the tourism sector. Next. So this is the proportion of the digital business ecosystem and outlook in Indonesia. As you can see here, e-commerce dominates the digital business ecosystem. This is really critical when we talk about e-commerce or e-services, because e-commerce talk about the digitalizations of formal businesses. And then you can see from here as well the comfort of Indonesian consumers regarding mobile e-commerce. They're very comfortable. They're very comfortable also with all different features in which e-commerce provides. So there's this higher level of accountability and higher level of trust that Indonesian consumers have on these e-commerce platforms. Now, coming from the digital economy, let's look at some of the tourism trends that is happening in Indonesia post-pandemic. Because I think this is something that's very important for you as well as for the rest of the audience, especially for you as a business economist in the future business economist. How has these tourism trends will shape Indonesia's tourism in the near future? Okay, next. Oh yeah. By the way, this analysis is conducted by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. So all these outlooks are based on their reports and analysis. So coming from the pandemic, the hotel trends in Indonesia is there's a very huge increase what we called as revenge tourism. So people who don't have the time to spend on vacations during their pandemic period because of mobility restrictions and other factors are now doing big tourism, huge tourisms in these years, because now as borders open and then there's less cases of COVID-19 risk, people are doing more and more tourism spending. The second is that lifestyle hotel is the new trendsetters. So after the pandemic, consumers, especially young consumers, are looking for unique identity or unique brand identity. So they're looking for hotels with vibes or different design style that really confer to their own likeness or to their own preference. And this is also extends to the way in which the hotel delivers their value. So now you're seeing maybe with Box, right? You're seeing a lot more pillbox hotels popping up everywhere in destinations in Indonesia. Third, in-room entertainment becomes more important as people are used to staying at home and having huge access to different in-room entertainment accessibility. In-room entertainment becomes critical in hotels, especially when they travel. So one of the things that hotels can do this is the increased use of IoT, Internet of Things. So they might want to include more smart amenities in their hotel rooms. The fourth one, I think, because of the aspect of being isolated and maybe a little bit of cage in the house, is that there's increased trend of glamping. So it is outdoor. It's not the same as camping, but it's a little bit posh. So it's a little bit more glamorous. That's why it's called glamping. There's also life on board. What does this mean, life on board? Life on board means, as you can see more in YouTube trends, people are doing sailboating from island to island. This is also part of the solo travel, or like the new alternative way of traveling, in which the process of just just being out there, I think it's one of the appealing aspect of this. This is also helps to support marine tourism as well in Indonesia. There's also higher, more creative economic collaborations. As sustainability gains more important, also in Indonesia, there's this huge renaissance about highlighting the importance of integrating local culture into businesses. Creative economic collaborations becomes important. So I think in the near future, hotel owners as well as big hotel chains in for where it's foreign owned or domestic chains need to think about ways in which they can engage in terms of creative economy output or co-creations in this domain. Now, during the pandemic, there is a CHIA-SA standard implementations. I think this is the first widely recognizable approach in which at that time it was really instrumental in making sure or increasing assurances for guests that the hotels have protocols and standards ready to tackle COVID-19 risk. So CHISA stands for cleanliness, health, safety, and environmental. So still coming back to the sustainability theme. Now, the other aspects of the pandemic is work from destinations. So no longer working in the office is the only way to gain productivity. So productivity can also be gained from working not in the office, but in a destination in which they makes the employees much more happier. Now comes with that also wellness tourisms. So as people understand the devastations of COVID-19 and the importance for mental health as well as physical health, wellness tourism is it's getting much more attractions and is appealing to a broad swath of customers, not only for foreign tourists, also for domestic tourists. Next. Now look at culinary trends. So this is what we're talking about F&B. Dine in and food delivery, right? So a lot of people are dining in, not dining out. So what's really interesting about this is that more and more emphasis now is about how close are your favorite bands, favorite restaurant brands are near to you. So local dishes. So when you look at Gojek, you see near me. What's near me? It's becoming more and more important because people are now seeking out not like eating out in the restaurants, but they are likely to eat at home and enjoy the convenience of food delivery. Now, with dining in, something comes out of that that's also really becoming important is the unboxing experience. I thought this was a really interesting trend coming out of the pandemic push, is that packaging becomes more important. It becomes an aspect of uh, evaluations of the food experience provided by the restaurant. So previously, when we dine in the restaurants, we don't have any type of unboxing experience. But now, unboxing experience becomes such a norm because food delivery services as well as cloud restaurants becomes such a mainstream aspect of the during the pandemic era. Outdoor restaurants becomes critical. So people are less inclined to eat indoor and they're seeking more outdoor restaurant. Cloud kitchen becomes more important. One of the ways you may look at in different store outlets, maybe near BST or maybe in Gading Serpong, you see a lot of big companies like Boga Group and other large F&B group have what they call a cloud kitchen, in which No seatings, there are no tables. It's basically just a kitchen front in which just to help with their digital food delivery services. And then the fifth aspect is product placement in films and other medias. While such things is very popular in Korea, for example, Subway plays a lot of advertisement money in some Korean K-pop drama. This also has caught on in the local film as well as the media scene in Indonesia. Because as people engages with more content, especially like with through Netflix, so they are seeing more and more in terms of how is the product related with their favorite stars or their favorite shows. So these parasocial aspects of product is becoming more important. The better product placement it is, the more attractive the brand becomes. One aspect of the pandemic push and the increased concern of being healthy and safe, also meaning that there is higher appetite for healthy and plant-based food. So vegan food is thriving since. I know recently Burger Greens, I have programs in which they select like 10 or 15 people in which they will provide for 3 months full vegan meals, full vegan catering meals. So I think that's one aspect in which Indonesians, especially Indonesian consumers, has caught on the importance of having a good diet, a balanced diet, especially a plant-based diet. And plant-based diet does not only address about the healthy aspects, also about the climate aspect. Affordable all you can eat. Perhaps one of the aspects that we see a lot is the ICE model of restaurants. So all you can eat restaurants. But the all you can eat restaurants were previously, this used to be like a buffet, used to be very expensive when you think about hotel, maybe around 500,000 or 400,000. The rise of all you can eat establishments, especially for non-hotel restaurants, has really decreased the price. Also, the availability of suppliers that supply it. For example, Korean barbecue, now you can get it for about 100,000 to 95,000 rupees, which is pretty reasonable compared to previously maybe about 300,000 or 500,000, right? So people are looking for value in terms of culinary, and they want to make sure they spend as small as possible. R2E, atau ready-to-eat conveniences store food, now also becomes a trend. You can see that, especially those who come to Prasmul in Kita Mart, or if you go to the nearest Indomaret or Alfamart, you're seeing a lot of section, especially nearby the cashiers, when they sell a lot of ready-to-eat food. So now ready-to-eat becomes much more priority and a lifestyle for the busy Indonesians on the go. Next. Travel agency trends. So one of the things that has been driving Indonesian travel agency market is really the arrival of OTA. When I mean by that, it's probably Traveloka, Ticket.com, and other OTA platform. So online travel agency has really been the drive of innovations. If you think about Traveloka right now Traveloka can almost do everything. So it has become the to-go lifestyle app for tourism. So if you are traveling, if you're looking for experiences, if you're looking to visit desa wisata, for example, or if you're looking to book a car or you're looking to book a hotel, you all go through this one platform, so one super travel app. So previously, I talked about mobility becoming much important and benefited from the push of technology. Well, as a result of it, now Desa Wisata now becomes a main attractions for a lot of Indonesian domestic tourism as well for international tourists. So they are discovering much more authentic places to go, and Desa Wisata becomes that place. It becomes this so-called alternative tourism lifestyle. And this also goes with the next one, the next trend, which is camper van. So people are not staying in hotels, they're staying in camping in the van. This is part of probably the drive for more remote tourism experiences. And probably it is also being caused by the need to not be with people, not to be with crowds. So this is sort of the anti-crowd lifestyle tourism movement. Sustainable tourism is becoming much more important. You will see later on about the rise of regenerative tourism. Medical tourism is becoming important. Indonesia has been putting a lot of money in terms of this medical infrastructure because it's trying to gain shares in terms of the medical tourism that has so far benefited, especially two countries in ASEAN, which is Singapore and Malaysia. As a result of mobility and also as the result of more availability in terms of transportations from and to the destinations, there are much more tourism destination equity. What it means by this, when usually mass tourism goes to several places or several popular destinations in Indonesia, now tourists are seeking more less crowded, less popular tourism places. So hopefully you're seeing a higher level of equitable sector growth in tourism in different destination places, not the most popular ones. Sport events has becoming a mainstay and becoming a focus for the Indonesian tourism. For example, by the MotoGP, also Formula E, also a lot of Asian Games, and as well as PON. So sport has really become an attractions and also becomes sort of the driver of tourism multipliers of some cities. You can probably look at the effect of our withdrawal to World Cup U20 and how some of the host destinations, for example, the mayor of Solo, Mas Gibran, was very disappointed for our withdrawal because that the amount of preparations and the amount of potential economic impact that such event may bring to their city. So sport events becoming a important also part of the destination marketing program. Next, attraction trends. So what attract people to go to this destination? Now people are looking for micro tourism. So this micro tourism is not as big as macro tourism. A micro tourism could also be uh, some of you going for a Sunday ride on car free day, but you're looking at different aspects, different attractions in a local city. So it is sort of about a small tourism that is a day trip. So this is some aspect of this microtourisms. Staycations becoming much more mainstay. When mobility was restricted from moving one city to the other city during the COVID-19, staycations becomes the lifesaver for the hotel industry. It has also becomes a lifestyle and a way to kind of minimize the costs while still receiving the same tourism experience by staying at a local hotel in the local market nearby. Film and tourism destinations. So film and tourism destinations has been growing lately. So destinations and attractions are really trying to buy that placement. So for example, in Cappadocia, in Istanbul, Turkey, becoming more important when AADC comes to Istanbul and more people are more aware of the destinations. The same thing with Bali, the same thing with Solo, and the same thing with Jakarta and other places. So one of the way you can grow your image and awareness is to improve your placement within a film and in the tourism industry. Sustainable tourism still remain an attraction. So when we talk about sustainable tourism, we're talking about sustainable activities. So we're looking at program or tourism activities that focus on making an impact in terms of the environment. So you might go help Sungai Wash to help with the river cleanup. Also, you may help with the local community in terms of learning their crafts and craftsmanships as well as their arts. Or you may create a local impact by staying at one of their staycation places. Adventurous tourism is getting more important among Indonesians in the Indonesian tourism sector. So people are looking more toward much more alternative, much more green, much more outdoor activity. There's really interesting called coffee tourisms. So Indonesia is very famous with its coffee and very popular with it. So this coffee tourism really understanding the ecosystem and the value chain of the coffee industry in Indonesia. So this is what I call sort of this um, sort of craft coffee tourism. So they're looking for more this independent, more storytelling behind the coffee itself. Metro tourism is also becoming more important, especially in Jakarta, when you have a lot of attractions to go around. People are using public transportations as well as the convenience of online transportation services to enjoy different aspects of attractions in the city. Souvenir tourism is becoming much more important. So people are looking for peculiar souvenirs, and they're becoming and such an attractions that people are willing to go far and beyond to get those souvenirs. A souvenir tourism could be me, who love to look for souvenirs or unique souvenirs, especially in destinations, to bring back when they go home. So it's no longer just bakpia. Now people are looking for local craftsmanships and local souvenirs made by locals. Next. So what does this mean, right? So one of the aspects when we talk about the tourism industry and how it has changed, we're talking about the automation of the future of work. I know it seems kind of very scary, but I thought there's a silver lining in it. So McKinsey did a report in 2019 and found that for the leisure tourism sector, actually, what is needed in the future are also creativity, advanced problem solving, and social and emotional skills, which is much very associated with the leisure industry. So these things are becoming much more apparent and much more important. As people have more leisure times, as people want to engage in some kind of technological process, this type of skills are becoming more important in the face of automation. Next. So you can look at here. So automation's jobs lost about 23 millions and net gains about 46 million. So in Indonesia, one of the things that is booming that benefits from increased labor demand will be healthcare, construction, manufacturing, and retail. But especially those skills that require advanced degrees will stand to benefit with the increased automation in the Indonesia's employment sector. Next. Okay, here's the effect of the automation. So as you gain more expertise, it's likely to affect yours. Is not included the development of ChatGPT, so I just want to warn you in advance because that may have some effect as well for those who probably have expertise, skills, and as other aspects, such as artists, for example, who previously may be thought as impossible. So in the automation aspect, susceptible activities include collecting data, predictable physical, and processing data. But when you talk about the leisure industry and how much variability it is in terms of demands and needs of the customers, it's very hard to make it into an automated process, although some aspect of it can be automated. Next. So is the effect of the current work activities in Indonesia by 2030. Automation will replace about 23 million workers. Next. Next. Let me pass this. Next. 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 Now, I want to talk to you about the transformative and regenerative travel and why this has such an effect. I think in most of the trends that we see from the ministry and of the industry. So as people are looking for way to do better or better themselves, people are looking for what they call a regenerative tourism. So they want to leave something better than they found it, and they want to have their footprints or their tourism footprints to have less impact on the destination in which they visit. And you see that with camper vanning, remote tourisms and other aspects in which I think a lot of tourists really want to make positive impacts on their destinations. So what is regenerative tourism? So it's a tourism that brings transformational experiences to guests where they can make positive impacts on the sustainable pillars in the destination community and leave the destination in a better state for future generations to enjoy. So the difference between sustainable and regenerative is that in sustainable, we want to maintain some kind of neutrality between the damages as well as the benefits. So we want to make it neutral. It's not necessarily want to make it a plus one or there should be a net gain. In regenerative, we focus in terms of co-creations and co-evolutions between the tourism stakeholders as well as the tourism actors in terms of how can they elevate the destination community in which they visit, in which they are um, passionate to visit on. So that has been really the staple behind it. Next. So let's look at the tourism industry and what's regenerative travel. I think you can play this video. Let me see. Is there an option to play the video in the presentation? No? Okay. If not, that's okay. So I'll show you an example of an upstart. Next. An upstart, what I call a green tourism upstart. This is by Carbon Ethics. Carbon Ethics is actually an NGO, a non-governmental organization, in which Universitas Prasemulia has actually engaged in. So our last graduation, we work with Carbon Ethics to make sure that every graduate from Universitas Prasemulia has a mangrove plantation. So we're graduating by combating climate change. So Bumi Journey is a branch of that businesses. So Bumi Journey is focused on regenerative travel. So they focus on creating a regenerative travel product that stand to benefit the environment as well as the local community behind it. So there's an increased focus in terms of what I call social impact as well as the environmental impact of the product itself. So they tend to be much more environmentally friendly, low carbon, but also still meeting those needs in which make sure the impact that the tourism provides to the local community is maximized. So the group trip with them usually comes in which they have partnership with the local communities. They have making sure that you are happy along the way. You also minimize the negative impacts by choosing a much more low carbon alternative way of traveling around, such as cycling, and then make sure that the positive impacts are measured. So there's a lot more calculations in that aspect. Okay, next. Okay, there's a video here, but I don't think we can play it, but the Boomi Journey is just an example of it. And lastly, pandemic push. The pandemic push has resulted in increase what we call the customer jobs, but it's the rise of self-serve experience. So the impact of it in terms of how consumer behave, it could be a positive or negative, but it is actually really depending on the culture and the situation. So next. In the leisure industry, automations, well, in general, increased automation often is associated with customer jobs in the service processes. Imagine you're going to the bank, right? So now going to the bank, you can just pretty much done 70% of your services in the bank through the ATM machine. However, a lot of people in the leisure services often forget when we try to automate leisure experience, we tend to have a lot of resistance. And why is that? It's because when we talk about customers in leisure settings, they want to engage in some kind of technological pauses, right? They want to have time to rejuvenate, right? To heal back. So when we talk about healing, actually healing is not physically healing, but they're also mental healing. So this is really critical when you talk about the pandemic push for technology and how it changed behavior, is that they're looking for these technological pauses. So customers may engage in doing these customer jobs, but for the leisure industry, the one way that we can implement technology is to make it less painful for them, and they are the one who stand to benefit from it. Next. So this is the effect of deflation in the US. Yeah. So in US, because of the pandemic push, they use a lot of automation. So they use a lot of self-service checkout, self-service check-in, and etc. But the aspect of it that is really interesting coming out of it is that they start asking for tips. So these providers, for example, Walmart or Marriott or or restaurants, even though the customers order themselves, they still ask for tips. So, for example, this one quote said, just the prompt in general is a bit emotional blackmail. So, when you are completing done with the food, sometimes there's a prompt that says, like, hey, would you like to tip for 10, 5, or 15%? Yeah. So, in this situation, he was asked to do a 10%, 20% trip on his $6 water bottle at an airport self checkout machine. So, I'm not saying this happens in Indonesia because tips is not something that is culturally normal in Indonesia. But when you talk about other developed countries, especially those with a high level of automations in the service process, this is something that you might want to consider of because of the how it affects their discretionary spending. Next. So when customer jobs are painless, it could really stand to benefits. So let's look at the UPM Parkir Mandiri. And this might happen in leisure sectors. So the pandemic push from the provider standpoints, it also means that we increase automations, but automations in the right way. So for example, when you talk about Universitas Prasemulia, who recently have a self-parking, it can generate substantial revenue for Prasemulia a month. It generates almost 150 million rupees a month. However, it's manned by 3 personnel. And when you talk about the Universitas Prasemulia, it's such a huge campus. It has 3 gates, right? So it has 3 gates with about 11 automated gates covering front and back entrances. But it is only managed by 3 personnel. So just imagine that. So you have 11 parking gates only managed by 3 personnel because every aspect of it, it's very automated. It's very profitable, but also customers tend to benefit. So students don't have to wait too long to leave the property, right? By using an automated, using e-money, they can just do it really quickly and they can read the plates. So there's a lower probability of service bottleneck, which benefits the customer. So let's look at the alternative. What will happen if UPM said that, hey, let's go back to before the new normal and let's have more manpower in terms of parking? So one of the things that they may be able to generate the same amount of revenue, but with more manpower means they have to spend more money. So 11 personnel working full time for parking gates, also as 3 parking attendant coordinator in which they have to pay monthly. So they are much less profitable. Customers don't stand to benefit from this design, as they may have slower service flow when they have to leave the property or enter the property, and there's higher chance of probability of service bottleneck. Next. So in summary, I think in post-pandemic, Indonesia's economic sector, particularly tourism, will grow in parallel with the digital economy. There's this mobility advantage that is provided by the digital economy that really will help one aspect of it with inclusivity as well with equity. So more people will spend more money at diverse places in terms of instead of just one places. And you think about services, especially digital services like Gojek. Now it allows people to penetrate, places in which becoming less popular. Now, what will happen with automations, especially from the provider's side? I think automations will create net gain in jobs. However, I think in my opinion, automation paired with increased support and entrepreneurship, I think will create the most optimized output for Indonesian economic sector, especially for the leisure industry. As you're seeing more and more entrepreneurs, they are more and more equipped with automations. So for them to deliver that value or to create or adapt or modify the value is much more easier, and then it can provide more uh, opportunities for employment for other people in their community. Tourism sector will benefit from increased automations, but we must think to consider is travelers seek pause from technology. As you can see from the trends, people are looking places in which they want to heal, they want to feel themselves, they want to have a change of perspective, and they want to leave from their normal, sometimes boring routine, maybe for their city life, right? So they want to have increase in leisure time and willing to allocate fund for transformative experiences or activities. So I think that's all my presentation for today. I hope it covers all regarding the different aspects of how this pandemic push has changed the leisure industry. As you can see from the trends as well as from the global macro trends in terms of the technology usage, it has positive and negative aspect. I think the most important point is how shall we allocate these changes? Are we allocating it for a much more positive changes in the long term, or are we just allocating it for short-term positive changes that may have long-term negative consequences? That's all from me. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Reda, for the amazing insight on leisure economy. And I'm sure that all of the participants will be able to gain important knowledge that can help them in their in this competition and even in their personal professional careers. Following that, we are going to have a Q&A session where you all can directly ask Mr. Reda your question. So how this works is you can all chat the questions directly to the YouTube comments, and we will help to read them out.
Okay, we will wait for the questions to pop out on the screen. And once again, participants can ask the question from the YouTube chat, and we will put up your questions in the stream. Okay, the first question has popped out. Between regenerative and sustainable tourism, which one is more profitable to a company and which one is more commonly implemented?
Okay, thank you so much. So between regenerative and sustainable tourisms, those tourism concepts are related, but I think in terms from the business standpoint, regenerative tourisms now becomes much more mainstreams because the focus is different. Regenerative tourism really focus on the customers and meeting customer demands in terms of what kind of impact the customer wanted to have. Because of that, it's much more customized. Thus, you can ask for a much more premium to when they purchase the product on where when they're doing when you're providing customized services for those customers. With sustainable tourism, it's much more a policy in practice. So it does not necessarily have to must have an actual gain in value. But in regenerative tourism, it's very much related in terms of meeting consumer needs and demands and changing their behavior. So there's much more, I think there's much more profitability in terms of regenerative tourism compared to sustainable.
Okay, that's from Michelle Delviana. I hope that answers. And the next question is from Clarence Fulgentius. What opportunities exist for domestic businesses, ranging from large to small and medium sized enterprises, to tap into the seats of Indonesian customers in the tourism industry?
Okay, good question, Clarence. One of the things that we see from the trends, from the Ministry of Tourism trends, is that um, the Indonesian tourism sectors is craving for this sort of niche tourism, right? So they want to have a niche experience. So I think when you talk about domestic businesses, I think especially the young entrepreneurs can really hone in on this niche craving for a niche experience. So they're no longer looking for the typical mainstream type of tourism experiences. They're looking for different alternative tourism experiences in which they also stand to benefits as well as the community. So still coming back to that regenerative travel. So domestic business still stand to benefits from this trend. And actually, as a local businesses, you are much more in touch with the domestic market. So you can create much more better value compared to a foreign hotel. For example, I will give you one example. When you think about a hotel like Westin, they have their own brand pillars. And much of their brand pillars are much more accustomed for Western standards. With Indonesia, they have much more local pillars. So when you talk about hotels in Indonesia, one of the most popular hotels among Indonesians are Amaris Hotel or Santika Hotel. And when asked why they become such popular, the answer is only one: their food and beverage is really good and it's much in tune with my tongue compared to the Western hotels. And now, what happened because what's going on in Santika and Amaris hotels, because they start providing more local foods, local ingredients, and local foods. International hotels are now start to adopt much more local food into their buffet line or in terms of their menu. So that's my answer to it is how you meet those niche needs of consumers and their desired expectations, which is often invisible from the surface. That's why you need further investigations of it or exploration.
All right, great answer from Pak Reda. And the next question is from Kanaya. Many creative jobs like art and writing are thought to be replaced by AI. Do you think there is any validity to this?
I think depending on the art and writing job, in my opinion, one of the things that is when you think about Web3, right, the new standard, is that if you think about art and writing job for a corporate, for example, hey, can you help me design this? Yes, those jobs may be threatened or lost because of it, because now AI can design it. Because corporate does not need design or art or writing that particularly have some kind of artistic or sentimental value. However, for original artists, for writers who write novels, who write stories, or those who create arts, I think authenticity remains a really critical aspect of it. And then you can see it with NFT as well. Is that the effort put by the artist really is much more important than the outcome or the look of the thing itself. So there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of vibe because of it. So the value of art and writing, I think, because of AI, it is going to be replaced or decrease in some segment of the art and writing domain. But I think those are original writers, novelists, painters are not going to lose out to AI because then people can know that it's generated by AI and there's no sense of individual or unique ownership about it. So that's my opinion.
All right, so it depends, right?
Yeah, it really depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
with Econ may use some Chat GPT, right, to help with
I think
the business.
everyone is just
Yes.
ChatGPT right now. Okay, is there any more questions? Oh, there is from Irene Aurelia. How has the increased digitalization impact customers' experience in the tourism industry in Indonesia?
I think increased digitalizations has really, how do you call it, really smooth out the service processes. So one apparent things for me as a traveler, you're seeing higher volume or higher velocity of growth in terms of the businesses. It's because it takes less time to complete a service transactions compared to previously, right? So when you check in at the airport, for example, or when you book an airline, now it only takes about 5 minutes. Even when I do it in the back of my parents' car, I can still book a hotel for my vacations in the days ahead. So one of the things that the customers experience has changed is that now customers perhaps are less prepared when they visit the destinations and then they want their apps to do everything for them. So they want to be able to explore and discover through that app. And then that becomes an essential part of that discovery experience of a destination. So when I think about digitization, I think the that aspect when they talk about Traveloka all in one app, it really talks about that. It's like, for example, Calvin going to Bandung with no preparation, but that's the point, right? That's the point of kind of figuring out and discovering the destination yourself without any intrusions or without any instructions. I think in Indonesia they call it otodidak ya. So that aspect is, I think, how the digitization has changed. But on the other aspects, on service, it has made it much more easier and much more transparent. So I think that's one of the positive aspects. Transparency in market is positive for the economy as well as for the businesses.
Okay, thank you for the explanation about the question. Uh, we're going to move on to the next question. The question is, what are the efforts done so far by Indonesia to improve medical tourism in the country?
Well, if you haven't not watched the news recently, I think if you look at the Ministry of Health as well as Pak Jokowi has been in several times, they've built a lot of RSUD ya, Rumah Sakit Umum Daerah. So central hospital, right? In English term, we call it central hospitals. Um, a lot, but also at popular tourism destinations. So they just built an RSUD in Labuan Bajo. I think they also rebuilt it in Solo. I think Batam is also next in their priority list. Jakarta, they have a lot of central hospitals, and they're also engaging in public-private partnerships to improve some of the state of the hospital. So, um, to answer the questions, in terms of medical tourism, one thing they have been trying to do is to build the central hospitals. On the other aspects, also building more supply in terms of the medical manpower. So that's why there has been a lot of revisions in terms of the medical professional field in the education aspect. But it also should have multiplier effect. It also talks about the nursing. So the nursing staff also becoming is being revised. So I think there's two aspects of it. They're building the infrastructure for the medical tourism, but they're also preparing and planning for the manpower that will fill those hospitals.
Okay, thank you for the question, Jackson Wijaya. And for the last question for the Q&A session, we have a question from Raditya Arkananta. The question is, in what ways can the pursuit of sustainability is and inclusive growth in Indonesia tourism sector generate more green jobs?
Good question, Raditya. It all begins with how you design it, the business. So, for example, if I am in the hotel business, um, if you're looking at sustainable standards, so I just learned this because I just participated in a workshop. How you design the hotels must be able to meet the standards. For example, I must purchase from the local suppliers. I must employ local members of the community. So that's just one of the few criteria, right, for sustainable standards in JSTC. For environment, right, I must make sure the system is built in place in which I cause less harm to environment. So like in UPM, we have the gray water recovery system. In my own laboratory in hospitality business, especially in food and beverage, we start dividing between organic and non-organic trash. And if you're smart, those organic trash now can go to maggot farms in which to produce maggots in which they can be fed as for fisheries and other agricultural industry. When you talk about energy, are you building more? Are you using more renewable energy in your hotels? Or how are you designing water usage and other aspects? So when you talk about green jobs, it really depends how you design your business. It also making sure you understand what are the standards and indicators of sustainable tourism. Because for example, booking.com just released a study in hotels, and then they found out that travelers now are seeking alternative destinations, and they want to make sure whether or not their hotels are performing any type of sustainable activities or they are sustainable in any way. So this has become the norm. And then because of this, I think green economy in Indonesia will thrive because by design and by policies, um, they have to make those impacts. They have to make sure the local community is taken care of, the environmental is preserved, as well as the social cultural is elevated into their value offering to the tourists. So that's what I will say about the sustainable and inclusive growth in sector jobs is how you design your businesses, and then is sustainable and inclusive growth part of your business vision and mission. It's also an important part of it.
Okay, so actually we have one more last question. So lucky for
Mhm.
Ken Lee Fang, you have the time to ask the question. So your question was, do you think CDGs or CSRs oriented tourism jobs will be a must in the future?
It won't, okay, tourism jobs, SDG will be a must, yes, because now companies and public companies in United States, in Europe, right, in developed countries are being evaluated by their ESG initiative. And those ESG impacts must be evaluated and thoroughly documented. So when you think about SDG tourism jobs, yes. Is it a must? I don't know, but it will be there, and there's a sector which taken care of it. So, for example, carbon ethics. I'll give you an example of carbon ethics. So, carbon ethics work with corporate clients. They work with embassies, and then part of it is because corporate clients have this need to be more environmentally sensitive. Either it's part of their CSR or they're part of their ESG obligations, and embassies must be able to showcase in terms of how their government help to bring about right the mission of the respective countries. For example, in Europe, especially in the European Union delegations, they have a lot of focus on making sure that sustainable initiatives, sustainable principles are being implemented in Indonesia. So they've been supporting a lot of those NGOs in that aspect. Now, when you talk about the SDG and CSR, yes, in the future it will become a norm and it will become essential, not necessarily a must, but it will become one of those essential aspects of the businesses in which they have to do. And then that benefits the tourism sector because then the tourism sectors must make sure that we have enterprises or businesses that can help traditional businesses like hotels, restaurants, and travel agency to meet those expectations.
All right, I think that's all of our questions. Thank you for all the answers, Reda, but unfortunately, everyone, that is all the time that we have left for this Q&A session. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who has participated enthusiastically throughout this webinar. But remember that it's not over as the competition goes on even after this. So do your best and keep moving forward. Now, before you leave, sir, us from Cube would
Well,
like to give a token of appreciation to you in the form of an e-certificate, which will be sent via your email.
And to commemorate this moment, we would like to take a photo with you, Sareda. To the committee members, please help with this, and I will count from 1 to 3. So 1, 2, 3. Again, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, Sareda, for the time,
you're
and
welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
yeah, and may we meet another time. And have a nice rest for today, sir.
You too. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy the competition. May the best team win.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude today's session, I would like to inform you to fill in our feedback form. Can the operator? Oh, there it is. There is the QR code, and please fill in our feedback form to receive your e certificate. And you have 3 minutes to fill in the feedback form.
While we wait for all of you to fill out the form, I would like to remind you that you can scan the barcode provided here or manually type the link from the below the barcode. And for those of you currently watching and have yet to join the competition, what are you waiting for? Join and be the part of the Cube 2023, and the registration link is available in the description below. And for today's webinar was very insightful. I have learned the evolution of tourism in the digital age has significantly played a role in the leisure economy that changed the way the industry works, and I hope you all have found it is as insightful as I did.
All right, so everyone could scan the QR code. And for those who are currently watching and have yet to join the competition, come on, what are you waiting for? Join and be a part of Cube 2023. The registration link is available in the description below. Okay, I think, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this session, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for being a part of this event. I am Calvin.
I am Daryl, and as the MC, I would like to apologize on behalf of the whole committee if we made mistakes in any way. It is not intentional.
Thank you again, and see you next time in our upcoming webinar series.
See you next time, and have a great day. Yeah.